This is a work of fiction created for entertainment purposes only. All characters and situations are imaginary. We do not promote or encourage illegal activities of any kind. The crystal champagne flute shattered against the marble floor of the Beauregard mansion, its fragments catching the golden light from the antique chandeliers. Emma Delacroix stood frozen in her emerald silk dress, the expensive fabric now stained with wine and shame, as 200 of New Orleans' most elite society members stared in horrified silence. "Get out!" Logan Treadwell's voice cut through the jazz music like a blade, his cold eyes showing no trace of the man who once promised to love her forever. "You don't belong here anymore, Emma. You never did." The humid Louisiana air seemed to thicken as guests whispered behind silk fans, their judgment weighing heavy as Spanish moss on ancient oak trees. Emma's hands trembled as she clutched her small purse, the divorce papers still fresh in her mind, along with Logan's cruel words about her common blood and worthless family name. But what Logan didn't know, what nobody in that room knew, was that the past was about to collide with the present in ways that would change everything. What would you do if your darkest moment became your greatest triumph? 3 months earlier, the garden of the Treadwell estate had been Emma's sanctuary. She remembered the morning light filtering through the magnolia trees as she tended to her grandmother's heirloom roses, their sweet fragrance mixing with the earthy scent of Mississippi River soil. The irony wasn't lost on her now. She had been nurturing beauty while her marriage withered like untended weeds. Mrs. Treadwell, the housekeeper, Marie, had appeared with the day's mail, her Creole accent thick with concern. "There's been a lot of official-looking letters lately." Emma had smiled then, naive to the storm brewing. She trusted Logan completely, believed in their love story that had begun 5 years ago at a charity gala, where she, a simple bookstore owner from the French Quarter, had caught the eye of New Orleans' most eligible bachelor and most feared man. Logan Treadwell didn't just own legitimate businesses. He controlled the docks, the judges, and half the police force. His family had ruled New Orleans' underworld for 3 generations, but Emma had only seen his gentle side: late-night conversations about books, quiet dinners overlooking the bayou, his promises that she made him want to be better. The morning everything changed. Emma had been wearing her favorite yellow sundress, humming while arranging white lilies in the foyer. Logan's footsteps on the mahogany stairs had sounded different, heavier, more deliberate. "We need to talk." Those 4 words had shattered her world more effectively than any hurricane ever could. Logan stood in the doorway of his study, surrounded by leather-bound law books and the smell of expensive cigars, his usually warm brown eyes now cold as January bayou water. "I'm filing for divorce, Emma." The words hit her like a physical blow. "What? Logan, what are you talking about? Last night you said you loved me. This morning Last night was a mistake." His voice carried the same tone he used with business rivals. Detached, calculating, final. "This marriage was a mistake. You don't understand my world, Emma. You never could." She had tried to approach him, to touch his face like she had 1,000 times before, but he stepped back as if she carried some contagious disease. "Your family has no influence, no connections, no real value to what I'm building here," he continued, each word precise as a surgeon's cut. "I need a wife who can help expand my empire, not some romantic notion from a bookstore." "But I love you," she whispered, her voice breaking. "Love." He laughed, the sound harsh in the elegant room. "Love doesn't run empires, Emma. Love doesn't secure political alliances or open doors to old money families. You're a beautiful distraction, nothing more." That afternoon the lawyers had arrived like vultures, their black suits and briefcases transforming her home into a business transaction. Emma had signed paper after paper in a daze, her mind unable to process how completely her life was unraveling. "You'll receive a modest settlement," Logan's attorney had explained with practiced indifference. "Enough to maintain a comfortable lifestyle, provided you sign this non-disclosure agreement and move out within 72 hours. Emma had stared at the check, more money than her family had ever seen, but somehow feeling like 30 pieces of silver. The NDA was thick as a Bible, filled with clauses about never speaking about Logan's business dealings, never using the Treadwell name, never contesting the divorce. "What about my things?" she had asked, her voice small. "Personal items only," Logan had said without looking up from his desk. "The jewelry, the clothes, the art, those stay here. They were never really yours anyway." That night, Emma had packed her few remaining possessions into 2 suitcases, her grandmother's silver brush, a few photographs from before Logan, her collection of first-edition novels that he'd always mocked as clutter. She had stood in their bedroom, their former bedroom, looking at the four-poster bed where they had shared dreams and whispered promises, and realized she was mourning not just a marriage, but the woman she thought she was. She had moved back to her tiny apartment above the bookstore in the French Quarter, the narrow rooms feeling impossibly small after years in the mansion. The smell of coffee and beignets from the cafe next door, which once comforted her, now seemed to mock her failure. For weeks, Emma had existed in a grey haze of humiliation and grief. Former friends from Logan's circle crossed the street to avoid her. Invitations stopped coming. The doorman at her old country club suddenly couldn't see her when she approached, but the cruelest cut came 3 weeks after the divorce was finalized. Emma had been walking past Commander's Palace when she saw them through the window. Logan and a stunning blonde woman, her diamonds catching the restaurant's soft lighting as they laughed over champagne. The woman wore the emerald necklace Logan had given Emma for their first anniversary, the one he said belonged only to Mrs. Treadwell. That night, Emma had cried until she had no tears left, holding the one photograph she had kept of their wedding day. In it, Logan was looking at her like she held the secrets of the universe, his love so obvious it radiated from the image. She wondered what had changed. When did love become calculation? When did promises become lies? Little did Emma know the answers to those questions, and so much more, would come sooner than she could ever imagine. The ivory invitation arrived on a Tuesday morning, delivered by a courier in white gloves, who waited while Emma signed for it with trembling fingers. The cardstock was thick as velvet, embossed with gold leaf that caught the morning light streaming through her apartment's single window. The honor of your presence is requested at the wedding celebration of Mr. Logan Treadwell and Miss Victoria Ashworth. Saturday evening, October 15th, 1990. Beauregard Mansion, black tie required. Emma stared at the elegant calligraphy until the words blurred together. 6 months. Logan had waited exactly 6 months after their divorce to marry New Orleans royalty. Victoria Ashworth, daughter of the federal judge, granddaughter of the shipping magnate, a woman whose bloodline traced back to the original French colonists. Everything Emma wasn't. Her hands shook as she set the invitation on her kitchen table, next to unpaid bills and final notices. Why would Logan invite her to this? Was it cruelty or carelessness? Did Victoria know about the invitation, or was this Logan's final twist of the knife? The phone rang, startling her from her thoughts. Emma, darling, please tell me you're not considering going to that travesty. The voice belonged to Celeste Boudreau, Emma's only remaining friend from her married life, and only because Celeste valued loyalty above social climbing. I don't know, Emma admitted, sinking into her grandmother's threadbare armchair. Maybe I need to see it. Maybe I need closure. Closure? Celeste's laugh was sharp. Honey, what you need is a vacation to anywhere that's not New Orleans. That man humiliated you enough during the divorce. Don't give him another chance. But as the days passed, Emma found herself unable to throw away the invitation. She carried it with her like a talisman, reading it during her lunch breaks at the used bookstore where she now worked for minimum wage, studying it while she ate solitary dinners of canned soup and crackers. The owner of the bookstore, Mrs. Chen, noticed Emma's distraction. You look like a woman wrestling with ghosts, she said one afternoon, her wise eyes kind behind wire-rimmed glasses. Sometimes ghosts are all we have left, Emma replied, reorganizing the same shelf of romance novels for the third time. Sometimes, Mrs. Chen agreed, but sometimes they're just keeping us from seeing what's really there. That evening, Emma made a decision that would change everything. She would go to the wedding. Not to win Logan back, not to cause a scene, but to prove to herself that she could face her past with dignity. She would wear her grandmother's pearl necklace, the only jewelry Logan hadn't tried to claim, and she would show everyone that Emma Delacroix hadn't been broken by their cruelty. She spent her last $50 on a simple black dress from a consignment shop, and her last 20 on getting her hair styled at a salon in the Quarter. When she looked in the mirror that Saturday evening, she saw echoes of the woman she used to be, elegant, poised, worthy. The Uber driver who took her to the Garden District kept glancing at her in the rearview mirror. You sure you want to go to this address, miss? These folks, He shrugged, unwilling to finish the thought. I'm sure, Emma said, though her heart hammered against her ribs as they turned onto the tree-lined street where she had once lived. Beauregard Mansion blazed with light, its antebellum columns draped in white silk and jasmine. Valets in crisp uniforms directed a parade of Mercedes, Bentleys, and classic Rolls-Royces up the circular drive. Emma watched from across the street as women in designer gowns and men in perfectly tailored tuxedos laughed and embraced on the front steps. Her world, her former world, the place she had thought she belonged until she learned the truth about belonging. that it wasn't about love or happiness, but about bloodlines and bank accounts. Emma squared her shoulders and walked across the street, her chin high despite the whispers that followed her entrance. She recognized many faces: the mayor's wife, several city council members, the district attorney, half the social register of New Orleans, and they all recognized her. "My God," she heard someone whisper, "the audacity. After everything that happened during the divorce. She looks good though, thinner, but good." Emma accepted a glass of champagne from a passing waiter and tried to blend into the background, but in a crowd of pastels and jewel tones, her simple black dress made her stand out like a storm cloud on a clear day. That's when she saw Logan. He stood near the grand staircase in an impeccable black tuxedo, his dark hair perfectly styled, his smile the one she remembered from their first dance. But now that smile was directed at Victoria Ashworth, tall, blonde, beautiful, in the untouchable way of women born to wealth. Victoria's wedding dress probably cost more than Emma's yearly salary, its pearl-encrusted bodice catching the chandelier light like captured stars. Emma's chest tightened as she watched Logan kiss Victoria's hand, the gesture so familiar it felt like watching someone else live her life. The life she should have had, if only she had been born different, been better, been enough. "You shouldn't have come." Emma turned to find Marcus Treadwell, Logan's younger brother, beside her. Unlike Logan, Marcus had always treated her kindly, even after the divorce. "Maybe not," Emma admitted, "but I'm here now." Marcus studied her face with concerned eyes. "Emma, whatever you're thinking." His words were interrupted by the sound of crystal hitting marble. Emma watched in horror as her champagne flute slipped from her suddenly nerveless fingers and shattered at her feet, the crash echoing through the grand foyer like a gunshot. Every conversation stopped, every head turned, and Logan's eyes found hers across the crowded room with the inevitability of thunder following lightning. Time seemed suspended in amber as Logan crossed the marble foyer toward Emma, his footsteps echoing in the sudden silence. The jazz quartet stopped playing mid-note, and 200 guests held their collective breath, sensing the electricity in the air like animals before a hurricane. Emma stood paralyzed in the circle of broken crystal, her grandmother's pearl necklace suddenly feeling heavy as chains around her throat. She could smell Logan's cologne, sandalwood and cedar, the same scent that used to comfort her during nightmares. "Emma!" His voice carried the authority of a man accustomed to commanding rooms full of dangerous people. "What are you doing here?" The question hung between them like a blade. Emma lifted her chin, drawing on reserves of strength she didn't know she possessed. "I was invited." A muscle twitched in Logan's jaw. That invitation was a mistake. A clerical error. A clerical error. The words escaped before Emma could stop them, louder than she intended. "Like our marriage," gasps rippled through the crowd. Someone's fan snapped shut with a sharp crack. In the balcony above, Victoria appeared like a vision in white, her face a mask of confusion and growing anger. "You need to leave," Logan said, his voice dropping to the dangerous whisper that used to make grown men step back. "Now." "Logan, darling, what's happening?" Victoria's voice floated down from the stairs as she descended like a queen, her train whisper-soft against the marble steps. Up close, she was even more beautiful. Porcelain skin, sapphire eyes, the kind of refined features that belonged on old money family portraits. "Nothing important," Logan replied without taking his eyes off Emma. "Just removing some unwanted debris." The word hit Emma like a physical slap. Debris. That's what 5 years of love had been reduced to in his mind. Around them, she could hear the whispered conversations starting again, guests pulling out phones to capture the drama unfolding in real time. "You threw me away like garbage," Emma said, her voice gaining strength with each word. "You took everything. My home, my friends, my dignity, and now you want to pretend I never existed. You were compensated fairly for your services," Logan said, the words deliberately cruel. "Consider tonight's entertainment your final payment." Victoria had reached the bottom of the stairs now, her arm slipping through Logan's with practiced possession. "Darling, who is this woman?" "Nobody," Logan said. "She's nobody." Something inside Emma snapped, not broke, but transformed into something harder and infinitely more dangerous. "Nobody." She laughed, the sound sharp as breaking glass. "Is that what you tell yourself to sleep at night? That the woman who loved you, who believed in you, who gave up everything for you was nobody?" The crowd was leaning in now, society matrons forgetting their manners in favor of front-row seats to the best scandal New Orleans had seen in years. Emma could see phones being raised, society bloggers typing frantically. "Love?" Logan's laugh was crueler than hers had been. You think what we had was love? It was charity, Emma. I felt sorry for you, a pretty little nobody from the quarter who didn't know her place. The words landed like bullets, each one precisely aimed to destroy. Emma felt herself fragmenting, the woman she had built from the ruins of her divorce crumbling under the weight of his contempt. You signed the papers, Logan continued relentlessly. You took the money. You agreed never to speak about our marriage or contact me again. Yet here you are embarrassing yourself and disrespecting my wife. Your wife? Emma's voice broke on the words. She's been your wife for what, 6 hours? And you're already protecting her from your past mistakes? Victoria's perfect composure finally cracked. Security, she called out, her voice ringing with inherited authority. Remove this person from our celebration immediately. 2 large men in black suits emerged from the crowd. Logan's personal security, Emma realized, men who had once nodded respectfully to her as Mrs. Treadwell now approached her, like she was a threat to be neutralized. Wait. The voice came from the mansion's front entrance, cutting through the chaos with unexpected authority. I believe there's been a misunderstanding. Every head turned toward the voice, and Emma's world tilted on its axis. Standing in the doorway, silver hair gleaming under the chandelier light, was a man she recognized from a photograph her grandmother had hidden away years ago. Tall, distinguished, wearing a perfectly tailored tuxedo that probably cost more than most people's cars, he carried himself with the quiet confidence of someone accustomed to being the most powerful person in any room. Grandfather? Emma whispered, the word escaping before she could stop it. The man, Reginald Delacroix III, smiled, and Emma saw her own eyes reflected back at her. Hello, my dear. I apologize for my tardiness. Traffic from the airport was simply dreadful. The silence that followed was deafening. Emma could practically hear the wheels turning in every socialite's mind as they tried to process this development. Delacroix wasn't just any name in Louisiana. It was the name, connected to oil, shipping, and political power stretching back to the original French land grants. Logan's face had gone completely white. That's impossible, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. Her family is... My family, Reginald said pleasantly, adjusting his platinum cufflinks, owns approximately 30% of the shipping that moves through the port of New Orleans. We also hold controlling interests in 3 major oil refineries, 2 banks, and... His smile grew sharper. The company that holds the mortgage on this lovely estate. Emma felt the floor shift beneath her feet, not from shock, but from the sudden understanding that everything she thought she knew about her past had been a lie. Her grandmother had never spoken about her family, always changing the subject when Emma asked about her father's side. Victoria's grip on Logan's arm had tightened until her knuckles were white. Around them, the cream of New Orleans society was rapidly recalculating social equations, phones buzzing with frantic texts, as news of this revelation spread through the connected networks of power and influence. Now then, Reginald continued, approaching Emma with outstretched arms, shall we discuss why my granddaughter is being treated like an unwelcome guest at what should be a celebration of love? As Emma stepped into her grandfather's embrace, breathing in the scent of expensive aftershave and old money confidence, she caught Logan's expression over Reginald's shoulder. For the first time since she'd known him, Logan Treadwell looked afraid, and Emma realized that her humiliation was about to become his nightmare. The transformation in the room was instantaneous and electric. Conversations that had stopped in fascinated horror now resumed in frantic whispers as society's elite scrambled to process this seismic shift in the social landscape. Emma Delacroix, the nobody, the discarded wife, the woman they had shunned for months, was now revealed as the granddaughter of one of the most powerful men in the South. Reginald kept his arm around Emma as he surveyed the crowd with the calm authority of a man who had been commanding respect for 7 decades. It seems my granddaughter has been having quite an adventure, he said, his voice carrying easily through the grand foyer. Perhaps someone could explain why she's standing in a circle of broken glass while being threatened by security guards. Logan stepped forward, his political instincts kicking in despite the shock written across his face. Mr. Delacroix, this is a private celebration. Your granddaughter was not invited. Not invited? Reginald's eyebrows rose with aristocratic surprise. How curious. I distinctly remember receiving an invitation myself just this morning. He reached into his jacket and produced an identical ivory card, though I must say the wording was rather interesting, something about ensuring Emma's attendance for old time's sake. Emma's breath caught as understanding dawned. Logan hadn't invited her out of cruelty or carelessness. He had been forced to. But by whom? And why? Victoria finally found her voice, though it came out higher than her usual patrician tone. This is our wedding day. Whatever family drama is happening here, it can surely wait. Family drama. Reginald's smile could have cut glass. My dear, when someone publicly humiliates a Delacroix, it becomes a matter of honor. And honor, as I'm sure your father the judge would agree, must always be satisfied. The mention of Victoria's father sent another ripple through the crowd. Judge Ashworth had built his career on the support of old Louisiana families that now included the Delacroix. Marcus Treadwell pushed through the crowd, his face pale but determined. Mr. Delacroix, please. My brother was unaware of Emma's family connections. If he had known, would it have changed how he treated her? Reginald's question hung in the air like smoke. Would her bloodline have made her tears less bitter? Would her pedigree have made the divorce less cruel? Emma watched Logan's face cycle through emotions, shock, calculation, fear, and something that might have been regret. She found herself remembering the man he used to be in their private moments, when the weight of his family's legacy wasn't crushing down on his shoulders. Grandfather, Emma said softly, the word still foreign on her tongue. You don't have to, don't I? Reginald turned to her with gentle eyes. My dear girl, I've spent 25 years looking for you. When your parents died in that car accident, your grandmother disappeared with you rather than let the family raise you. She thought we were too cold, too calculating. Perhaps she was right. His voice grew stronger. But she was wrong about one thing. She thought we wouldn't love you for who you are, rather than what you represent. Tears burned Emma's eyes as pieces of her history clicked into place. The mysterious trust fund that had paid for her education, her grandmother's evasive answers about their family, the way certain doors had always seemed to open for her, even when she didn't understand why. I've been having you watched, protected from a distance, Reginald continued. When I learned about the divorce, I wanted to intervene, but you seemed determined to make your own way. I respected that strength. It reminded me of your grandmother. But when I heard about tonight's invitation, I realized it was time to step out of the shadows. Logan finally found his voice. What do you want? The question was simple, but it carried the weight of recognition that the balance of power in the room, and possibly in New Orleans, had fundamentally shifted. Reginald studied Logan with the patience of a man who had outlasted 3 generations of ambitious young rivals. What I want, Mr. Treadwell, is for you to look around this room and understand what you threw away. My granddaughter loved you with the pure heart of someone who believed in fairy tales. You took that love and turned it into a weapon against her. Business is business, Logan said, but his voice lacked conviction. Marriage in our world is about alliances. Your world, Reginald interrupted softly. Your small, grasping, nouveau riche world that measures worth in decades rather than centuries. My family has been building empires since before Louisiana was even a state. We understand that true power comes not from taking, but from creating. Not from destroying those who love us, but from lifting them up. The crowd had grown completely silent, sensing they were witnessing more than just a confrontation. They were watching the changing of an old guard. Emma felt something shifting inside her chest, like a flower opening after a long winter. For months she had believed Logan's words about her worth, had internalized his cruelty as truth. But standing in her grandfather's protective presence, surrounded by the suddenly respectful attention of people who had scorned her, she began to remember who she had been before Logan Treadwell tried to break her. I don't want revenge, Emma said, her voice clear and strong. I don't want to hurt Logan or Victoria. I just want to move forward with dignity. Logan's eyes met hers across the ruined foyer, and for just a moment, she saw the man she had fallen in love with, vulnerable, uncertain, almost human. Emma, he said, her name barely a whisper. But whatever he might have said was lost as Reginald stepped forward, his presence commanding absolute attention. The Delacroix family is returning to New Orleans society, he announced, his voice carrying to every corner of the mansion, and we have some catching up to do. As the crowd began to murmur with excitement and renewed interest, Emma realized that her humiliation was over. Her transformation had just begun. 2 years later, spring 1992. The morning sun streamed through the tall windows of the Delacroix Mansion's conservatory, painting rainbow patterns through the crystal vases filled with Emma's prized orchids. She sat at the antique writing desk her grandfather had given her, reviewing architectural plans for the new women's shelter that would open next month in the French Quarter. The shelter represented everything Emma had learned about power in the past 2 years. That true strength came not from wielding authority over others, but from lifting up those who had been knocked down by life's cruelties. She understood now why her grandmother had hidden from the Delacroix name. Wealth and influence could become prisons if you let them, but they could also become tools for change. Miss Emma. Marie appeared in the doorway, the same housekeeper who had once brought her mail when she was Mrs. Treadwell. Your grandfather wants to see you in his study. He says it's about the Foundation's annual report. Emma smiled, closing the folder of plans. The Delacroix Foundation had become her passion project, funding education programs, small business loans and support services throughout Louisiana. Her grandfather had been initially skeptical of her philanthropic interests. Charity is fine, but don't let it make you soft, he had warned. But her business acumen had surprised him. The foundation was now profitable, sustainable, and making a real difference. As she walked through the mansion's corridors, Emma paused at a mirror and barely recognized the woman looking back at her, not because she looked different, though her hair was longer now, styled with confidence rather than desperation, but because of her eyes. They held knowledge, purpose, and something that had taken her months to name: peace. The transformation hadn't happened overnight. Those first weeks after the wedding disaster had been a whirlwind of media attention, social realignments, and painful conversations with her grandfather about the family she had never known. She had learned about her parents' love story, how her father, Reginald's only son, had married a beautiful Creole woman against family wishes, and how their deaths had torn the family apart. I was too proud, her grandfather had admitted during one of their long evening talks on the mansion's gallery. I let your grandmother take you rather than fight for you, and I've regretted it every day since. Your parents would have wanted you to know your heritage, but they also would have wanted you to choose your own path. That path had led her far from the woman who had once defined herself through Logan Treadwell's eyes. Emma had returned to school, earning an MBA that her grandfather's connections had made possible, but her own intelligence had made meaningful. She had traveled, studied, and slowly built a life that was entirely her own. She still saw Logan occasionally. New Orleans society was small, and their business interests sometimes intersected. The Treadwell empire had struggled in recent years, some said due to poor investments. Others whispered about federal investigations into their port operations. Logan had aged in ways that went beyond the mere passage of time. There was a hardness around his eyes now, a brittleness that spoke of regrets and roads not taken. Victoria had divorced him 6 months ago, taking half his assets and returning to her maiden name. Emma felt no satisfaction in his misfortune, only a distant sadness for the man he might have been in different circumstances. Emma, my dear, her grandfather's voice brought her back to the present as she entered his study. I have news. Reginald sat behind the massive mahogany desk, but his expression was brighter than usual, almost playful. The mayor's office called. They want to discuss your proposal for the riverfront development project. Emma's heart skipped. The project was ambitious, transforming abandoned warehouses into affordable housing and community centers while preserving the historical character of the neighborhood. It would cement the Delacroix name as a force for positive change rather than just old money accumulation. And, Reginald continued with a slight smile, I received an interesting phone call from Senator Morrison's office. It seems there may be an opening for a special advisor on urban development. In Washington. Emma's eyes widened. Only if you want it. Your work here has been noticed at the highest levels, Emma. You're building something remarkable, a legacy of compassion combined with competence. It's exactly what your parents would have wanted. As Emma looked out the study window at the gardens, where she had found peace after so much pain, she realized that Logan had been right about one thing. Love alone wasn't enough to build an empire, but love combined with purpose, strength, and the wisdom born from surviving betrayal, that could change the world. Her phone buzzed with a text from Celeste. Lunch tomorrow, I have news about the literacy program. Emma typed back, can't wait to hear it. Same cafe in the quarter. Where else? You're buying, Miss Foundation President. Emma laughed, the sound echoing through the study like music. 2 years ago she had been a broken woman, standing in a circle of shattered glass, being called nobody by the man she loved. Today she was Emma Delacroix, granddaughter, philanthropist, force of nature. Tomorrow she would be whatever she chose to become, and that was the most powerful thing of all. Sometimes the end of one story is just the beginning of a much better one. What dreams are you ready to chase?